Cool. Okay. So we're going to wait for a few people to arrive in. You guys have a beautiful view where you are in Spain by the river. Still some light.
Yes, we still have a 15 minutes light. It's the Rio Minho. Okay, do you want me to show you around and see a little bit of?
Yeah,
Okay.
or I'd say ideally, oh, that's beautiful, but we will wait, maybe we
Okay.
get a few more people in, but that's already
Okay.
gorgeous. And I know it's getting dark there, but it's great to have that there.
Yeah.
Francois, you're looking great as always, chilled, relaxed.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't have a river running behind me. There's a couple of children's toys, but yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, that's it. No, that's very cool. We have so what are you guys ready to start picking? I'm just while we're waiting for some people to arrive, but in general, Javier, is it nearly time to harvest?
Yes, we're starting next week, Monday, next week. The Albarino and Godello are the grapes that are mature earlier, the earliest. So we're going to start with both grapes, and then by the end of the week, next week,
yeah, about 20,
around the 20th.
21.
Yes, we're going to start with the Treixadura. It's the rain season. Well, it's going to be rain. It's going to be a hard harvest because of the rain.
Oh, so far.
Yeah.
It's been pretty difficult all around Europe, I think, this year. It hasn't been kind.
Yeah.
Alas.
Kind of anxious, but we'll see how it goes. Hopefully everything will turn out well.
Yes. I hope. Well, we'll welcome everyone who's joined us already, and please get involved as you always do, and just tell us where you are in the chat and what you're drinking. We will also be taking questions in the Q&A section at the bottom, and we'll come to those questions at the end of the session. But importantly, it's great to welcome Javier Francesca from Ramon dos Cesar in Spain, and also Francois Hasbrock in South Africa. So welcome, guys. Good evening. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for inviting us.
And we have a beautiful backdrop, and we want to catch some of that light you have. But just before we do, I just wanted to remind everyone, those who are viewing, whether you're on Zoom through Naked Wines, or you're on Facebook, or even watching again on YouTube or somewhere, a little bit of context. This session is about new kids on the block, which is a turnaway phrase, but in general, what we're saying is we're looking back at what happened in the past 18 months. Today is September 2021. And in the past 18 months, it hasn't been great for many people. And as you will all know, restaurants closed down, industries closed down. But what we have today is maybe a better byproduct of what has come from the past 18 months. In Javier's situation, which he'll tell us about now, Javier would typically sell into Michelin star fine dining restaurants in northern Spain, in Basque Country, where the culinary capital of Spain, and that business slowed and closed down. And we'll talk about how we were able to sort of get involved, and now we are all very fortunate to have the wines. And similarly, later on, we with Francois, the South African wine industry, while we were all drinking wine for breakfast and homeschooling, in South Africa, there was an alcohol ban, and they couldn't even have a glass of wine. Can you imagine? And things came out of that with regards, tanks were full, and it was where Francois interjected in a vineyard operation, and we were able to work together. So this evening is about two positives that have come out of one big negative, and that's important to consider as we have this evening's chat. So without further ado, please, guys, show us a bit of where you are on the river, and if you move your laptop, we might get different perspectives of light. There we go, a little bit of difference of light, and you're right down the vineyard there in front of the water. That's fantastic. So tell us, go.
Our region is Ribeiro. We are located in Galicia. Galicia is located at the northwest of Spain, and we are next to the river Miño, okay?
Yeah.
So what you see right now are our vineyards. Let me show you around here.
Perfect. Lovely. What a beautiful evening as well.
Yes.
And the River Minho, does that run into northern Portugal?
Yes. Yes. It goes along ¿cómo va? Va entre divide, el río Miño divide Portugal. No, it divides Portugal from Spain, Galicia, and it creates, we are in the Ribeiro that has a microclimate because the Atlantic Ocean, it's 50 kilometers from here. So it creates a damp climate. ¿Qué más?
Yeah.
Yes, it's there's a special climate that makes the grapes, especially the Treixadura, who is it's the queen of our region.
Yeah.
Okay, who develops the best.
Super. What I'm going to do just quickly there is I'm going to share my screen so I can show a map just to give everyone a little bit of context, and then we're going to come right back. Let's see, let's do this quickly. So this is where we're talking about. This is Spain, Portugal, and this is your winery here. And so we can zoom in a little bit just to, and then we'll go back to the video, which was far more entertaining than a PowerPoint presentation, but we can sort of see, you can see the distance, well, you said 50 kilometers.
Yes.
The ocean, the Atlantic. So that's a nice northerly cooling wind that blows in and cools down the temperature, I imagine, and brings in that salty air. Very good. Yes. And then if we go in, we can see the river. There's the river you guys are standing on.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay. Lovely. Okay, cool. So back to you. Lovely. So the light is dipping there, but maybe Javier, if I can remind you of, I'll tell our guests how it began from my side, and then maybe you can share some background from your side. But I remember it was early April, and a friend of yours and a friend of mine, Jonas Toftrup, who is the brother of David Toftrup, who we work with, or Fika, if you like those wines from Jumilla on the right side of Spain, the eastern side of Spain. And he contacted me and he said, I've got a really good opportunity. I have a very good friend who makes very good wines, but he has a bit of a situation with the restaurants, and can we have a phone call? And so we spoke, and he told me, and which you can share with us the story, but I asked him to submit the wines to our COVID rescue fund, which some of our viewers will remember. We had a $5 million COVID rescue fund to help those who were put back by the pandemic. And the wines came to me, and I think they probably went to Eamon in Ireland as well. But we tasted every wine and we said, yes, we will take everything. We want everything. And the good news is we've come back again to buy more. But Javier, how do you remember this situation?
Yeah, it was very complicated last year, you know, with the wines all the world. Of course, Ramon de Casar. You said before, Jonas is your friend. Jonas is a part of Ramon de Casar because Jonas, I think he is 45. I'm 45. Pablo Estevez, our enologist, is 45 also. We started, Ramon de Casar started in 2013. In 2013. Mm-hmm. We were very young. One day, Jonas stopped it up, tasted our wines. He knew Ramon de Casar in the beginning, and our development of Ramon de Casar was with
along
Jonas,
with him.
with Jonas Tofterap. Jonas is a part of Ramon de Casar, I said, and it was a pleasure to send our wines with Jonas because he is a good ethnologist, a good person,
Good
you know, a good friend of us, and well, naked for us in that moment, 18 months ago, was an angel because last year was terrible for to selling bottles,
in Spain,
restaurants,
everything was closed
in
down.
all the world, and
Mhm.
well, it was a good day for us. We had good luck with Jonas, with you, and we are very happy. Yeah. Sorry for my English.
No,
It's
very
great. It's
good.
great, Javier. Thank you very much. And yeah, well, like I said, Eamon and I, we knew these wines are perfect. These wines are another level. The texture, the viscosity, the sort of the mouth feel. It is really, you really feel quality, taste quality, and we taste a lot of wines every day. We taste a lot of wines, but with these wines, we knew they were very, very special. And so, yes, we bought everything, and then our
Yes.
customers, the angels, they bought the marketplace deals, and the ratings are really some of the highest ratings. I should know, but I might even say that they are the highest rated white wines
Oh, thank you.
on the website, and it was that from there that we were able to call you again and say, well, we would love to continue to work with you, because that is ideally the way we work, is in terms of sustainability, longevity, continuation, because to keep a relationship going. So we have two wines tonight. I've got two wines, and we'll just talk about those quickly, and then we're going to, for everyone who's on the call, we're going to also catch up with Francois and his Sauvignon Blanc and his Syrah, and then something in between as well. So that's the running order. So just quickly, Javier, we have two wines on the site at the moment, the Treixadura Albarino Godello. Can you just tell us a little bit about maybe a little bit of each of those grapes, what you expect from those grapes?
Sobre varietal.
Sí, pero quiero hablar sobre la variedad en sí. ¿Qué esperas tú de la Treixadura, del Godello y de la Albarino?
Okay.
Si quieres te traduzco.
You are in Ribeiro. Ribeiro is it's a good area to. We have a lot of white grapes. In Galicia we have a lot of our own grapes.
Okay.
Every grapes
develops better depending on the region. Okay?
Yeah.
And
no. I want to think. Treixadura, Albarino, Godello. It's a mix of aromas. It's a mix of fruity, and you can develop these wines to preserve these
aromas or
these natural these fruits.
Mm.
You are in Galicia in the north of Spain. The sea, the climate, our lands, our sands. We have with all our grapes green fruit in nose, and it's a mix of peach, of apple, of lemon. What do you expect about every grape? It's you can find a lot of different expectations every year, but in general, fruit and fresh.
freshness. Yes.
Good.
North.
I think, Javier, what we do that, and I can see that in the wine. What we will do now, because now the light where you are,
Yes.
it's going
Yeah.
so low. What I might just do is, if you guys want to go back inside, and then
Yes.
we continue with your next wine. But in between, while you're going inside, I can show some of the viewers at home some of the wines that I've been tasting this week and give them a bit of behind the scenes. So you guys go inside and then we continue with your other wine. Is that okay?
Yes,
Okay.
sure. We'll be
Cool.
back in a minute.
And Francois, you're doing all right there, pal? Yeah.
I've got 2 bottles of full wine in front of me. I'm just dandy.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Good.
man.
3/4 full, half full. Yeah, quarter full. Okay. Okay. So what I will do just in the meantime, so as we have been doing in the past, in the last, well, we don't mention
Teléfono.
thing. I think my camera is stalling. Oh, that's unfortunate. I'm gonna try that again. Okay. Oop, I've lost it. Okay, well, I'll just see if it catches up and you have my video. Let me try. What can I do? I'm going to keep talking. Francois, can you give me a thumbs up if you can still hear me? Yeah, you can hear me, but not see me. I think my picture is gone and you guys are back inside. Start my video. Thank you very much, Laura. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. Actually, first time that happened in 18 months, so not bad at all. So what has been happening in the past 18 months is that samples have been sent to my home or Toby or Matt, the wine guy, and we taste them at home. And occasionally we get back together in the office now, but limited. So I just thought I'd share with you some of the wines we have. So what did I taste? This is from Tom Puigvert, actually from Spain. So Rioja, white Rioja, new vintage. And it is a little bit of oak and then lots of fruit. So he's nailed it. I think that's quite a difficult style to get right, white Rioja. And I think he's nailed it. A wine from Francois, do you know Mike Patterson from Jackson Estate? You used to make wine at Jackson Estate. So this
We work together.
You work together. Oh, that's cool. And we'll talk about that and ask for dirty secrets. This is Mike's Chardonnay, Dillon's Point. It's a brand new wine. It's going in the Fine Wine Club this month, at the end of this month. So tasting good. The next wine, just to share with you, this is one of 6 wines that will be going in a German rescue case. So just briefly, July 14th, a massive thunderstorm went through Northern Europe, went through Germany and Belgium and wiped out a massive, a wine region called the Ahr Valley, as well as other areas, and lots of devastation, wineries, barrels, everything lost. And what we want to do is fundraise and do a marketplace to raise funds, donate all of the profits to regenerate that region. So I've been tasting lots and lots of German wines, which is a pleasure. And this is just one of those. It's a Rheingau, Riesling, Friesenheim, Friesdahl. It's one of the 6 that will be in the case, most likely. And that case, that marketplace deal will be coming 30th of September, I believe. If that's a Thursday, that's when it will be. Then just quickly, Sam Plunkett, those of you who love Sam Plunkett's Australian wine, this is one of 3 wines here. I've got them 3 different bottles. You know, we ship his wine and some wines from New Zealand and some fine wines from Australia. We ship them in bulk. So we ship them in a big flexi tank, in a big balloon, ship them across the world so that we're not transporting glass. We're minimizing the carbon footprint. And then we bottle them at our bottler in Germany. And we're just doing some trials, technical trials, to see, can we reduce the amount of filtration? Can we keep some of the goodness? And I'm just tasting back and forth. We're always just pushing quality. And the results are very good so far. What else? Last wine. Let's go one last wine. 2 last wines from Portugal, not so far from you guys on the Douro. This is Mario Negras and his wine called New. And honestly, I think that is the biggest and boldest and sort of most generous version of New. Typically his Reserva gives this character, but tasting it now, this one's real dark fruit, black plummy fruit, and it's delicious. So that will go live in the next few days. And finally, from South Africa, a mate of yours or an acquaintance of yours is Richard Kershaw, perhaps Francois, and his Elgin Syrah, which we can talk about that when we're catching up on your Syrah. Elgin, freshness, Stellenbosch, different styles and the sort of power in between. So those are some of the wines that I have at home, but it is with great pleasure that we return to Spain, out of Marlofornia and back to Spain. So Javier, Francesca, can you just tell us briefly about the Treixadura, the difference between these two wines that people might expect. You talked about Treixadura and the intensity of fruit, but in terms of styles, they both rate 95%, 98%, but what is the difference? Is one more crisp and one more body, or what would you say?
Yeah, the difference is we think two different lands, granitic and arcilla. So we have two different lands. We have we prepare one Treixadura for it's appropriate for one wine, and another Treixadura we separate for another wine. In general, the difference between two wines, I think we said before, Ribeiro, the mix is explosion, it's in nose, is very fruity and very balanced in mouth, and Treixadura, like 100% Treixadura, the other wine, I think the character, the personality of one grape, in this case Treixadura, I think we have another aromas, we have a flower, we have herbal essences, citrus, of course, fruit, but I think in your mouth you have volume, you have fresh. It is balanced, of course. Different styles. I think the first wine, the mix, is all you weight of white wine.
What to expect in white wines? Okay.
Of course, it's very easy, very
easy to drink.
And Treixadura, I think, is for eating, for food, to enjoy. I think it's different people, different customer, different
for
style.
Different palates.
Yeah, and different events. It's a different profile. No, that's and the good news is that people seem to appreciate both. The demand is great, and people are buying again, and the comments are amazing on these wines, which is why it was very important to have you guys on this call. So thank you for your attendance.
No, we're very thankful.
It's a pleasure. It's a responsibility. You are our family there.
Yes.
It's a pleasure making wines, and you help us to enjoy with people.
Yes,
that's good. And if people, last question for now, and then we will have lots of questions afterwards, but if people, when it's people feel comfortable to travel again, can people visit your winery?
Yes, of course. They're more than welcome, of course.
Yeah. And can they contact you maybe on your wall? Can they just send you a message on your Naked Wines wall? Yeah.
Yes, sure. We'll be expecting some visitors from
a lot of
UK.
people from UK visited our winery
this year.
Cool.
And they really like it.
It will be a pleasure.
Yeah.
Nice one. Well, I have to add my name to the list. That's cool. I want to.
We're looking forward.
Nice one. Well, great. Thank you. The river was awesome. Francois, tuning in, calling South Africa. How are you, my friend? All right. So, to remind, welcome, Francois. I mean, shall I introduce your greatness, or would you like to give us a rundown of your repertoire, your history, your CV? But
I think you're probably going to be more complete about it than I am, so I'll leave it to you.
Well, there's two sort of great estates that stand out for me, but basically Francois, you're a pro, and you know pros, and pros that I know you, and so you come very highly recommended. And we met back in 2014 or something like that down in at the Cape Wine Fair, and hung out and tasted wines and liked the styles and everything. But you used to work at Waterford Estate, which is a premium South African wine estate, Stellenbosch. also Jackson Estate in New Zealand, Margaret, where you worked with Mike Patterson and came out alive. And but also,
me or Mike?
Yeah, well, I think exactly double trouble. But you also you know Rod Eastope quite well, is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
And how do you guys know each other, you and Rod?
It's just again through Mike. I mean, the common New Zealand. I mean, it's two small islands. I mean, they tend to know everyone down there.
Yeah,
so that's where our paths crossed, and I think it's actually through Mike's wife at that stage. And I don't actually know if she still works with them, Cloudy Bay.
That's right.
And I mean, they're a pretty quite high profile little posse moving around down there. Although you wouldn't know it when you speak to them, they're such humble people.
Yeah.
But I mean, they pretty much put the industry on the map.
Yes, indeed. And I was at marketing at Cloudy Bay. That's right. So those are, I mean, so you've made some great wines in great places. You're back in South Africa sometime. And, you know, you and I met a couple of years back, but now it was, so we were familiar with one another, but perhaps we could just remind people who, many of whom will have your wines from the 6-pack that we released recently. But would you mind reminding everyone, first of all, what was the scene, so, you know, X number of months ago in South Africa with regards to lockdown, with regards to the challenges for the South African wine industry, let's say, and then we can sort of fast forward and I can share some clips.
Yeah, so I mean, in a nutshell, we went through, I mean, the entire world went through an interesting period, let's be honest, and still are. But in our case, now I'm not going to delve into politics, but our government thought it's a very wise decision to effectively put a blanket alcohol prohibition on our industry, and they did it in various steps and various levels of intensity. The first one that came through was in harvest in 2020. So much so that we actually didn't know if we were legally allowed to leave our houses to go to the cellar to do pump overs.
Yeah. Wow.
Up to a certain extent, it panned out that for 2 weeks we just kind of drove in and hoped for the best. And then intermittently throughout the year, somebody did do the tally, but it ended up being effectively 6 months of a year that there was a total prohibition of sales of alcohol, all sorts. In any form. So you weren't legally allowed to sell or consume, well, you probably could consume alcohol, whichever you had on stock throughout that period. So, I mean, it effectively upended the entire industry in terms of planning, logistics, future planning, production. And it's still an ongoing issue now. I mean, the last, let's call it prohibition for a abbreviated word we had was not even a month and a half ago, for another 2 or 3 weeks. So that sword always looms there in the background and can be whopped down on a Sunday evening at 9 o'clock. And that's what they do. It's literally on a Sunday evening, 9 o'clock. They say 12 o'clock effectively this evening. It's effectively, it's illegal to sell alcohol in South Africa.
And so what does this mean for livelihoods then?
Chaos, pretty much. Businesses, honestly, I mean, that's where our paths very happenstancely crossed, which you can delve into. But the biggest challenge, Ray, is the fact that from a business perspective, there's absolutely no way to do any planning. And I mean, my other colleagues will know as well. I mean, one of the big issues that we've got in wine production is there has to be a certain flow of production. One vintage replacing the next, one going into bottle, the one taking a label.
Yeah.
And if you effectively, depending on how your business is split, exports versus local consumption, but let's say it's a 50-50% split, and 50% of your market effectively gets taken away from you instantly, you've got a bit of a challenge to figure it out. So yeah, but that being said, we're a wily bunch down in South Africa. We've been around the block a couple of times with some interesting curveballs being thrown at us.
Yeah.
And we just figure it out and trek on, man.
I think so. You're right. And I would encourage people to put questions into the Q&A, which is at the bottom of your screen on the right. But I did just quickly catch something in the chat, I think by a lady called Carolyn. The question was, but it's relative, just to put it into greater context, but Francois, was what has alcohol got to do with COVID?
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, there is obviously a socio-economic issue as well of alcohol abuse, and the rationale behind the government's blanket call of preventing alcohol sales and hopefully alcohol consumption is their argument was it would take down a resource strain on emergency services, drunk driving, violence, hospitals, and obviously there was a reduction there. But then we could also probably turn around rightly and say, but is your job not to make sure there's a resource allocation for everything? So effectively, yeah, I think the remedy, unfortunately, ended up being worse than their procured cure, because tens of thousands of people have lost their employment now. And ironically enough, now they're probably drinking. Which makes it even worse.
There's, I mean, and just briefly, but then we will come on to the sort of, let's call it the happier side of this story. But yeah, you would have bootlegging, you'd have shebeens, and you'd have all the illegal stuff, because in any country, in any society, when you say you can't do that, well,
it doesn't stop.
Yeah, a portion of you will go, well, we're going to do that, and so, but you do it without control. There go the regulations, there goes the streamline. So, yeah, I mean, it's I mean, I just recalled speaking to Richard, we mentioned earlier, Carmen Stevens, and just the sort of challenges in society, because there was this fear from the government, and there's this fear from the lack of control, because you couldn't sell alcohol. But tell us then, Francois, you know, how did you and I reacquaint ourselves?
Via this, I think, and to be more specific, a single tweet that I sent out. I'm a slightly prolific tweeter for some reason. It is my advice on social media. Please don't follow me if you're a sensitive soul. Luckily, in my personal business that I run under Blackwater, I've got a very, very lean business structure. So the lockdown was obviously not great, and the prohibition was without a doubt not an ideal situation, but about 80% of my production is exports anyway. So I wasn't completely over the cliff. My problem started with I'm getting incessant phone calls and emails from guys I buy grapes from. Just literally, they're close on the precipice, and they're like, we've got no idea what to do. The big producers that are happy to take the grapes, often at a discount, which is not ideal, they have effectively just cancelled their contracts overnight with a valid reason of saying, listen, our tanks are full of wine and we're not legally allowed to sell it.
And so, just to give us sort of a timeline, so the pandemic hit, and let's call it March 2020. You were in lockdowns, you had alcohol bans. So March 2020, the 2020 vintage was picked, and then you get up to July, you get up to November, and that 2020 vintage, because there was no sales in South Africa, because there was no alcohol, there was the alcohol ban, 2020 was not going out of tank and into glass, because why would you buy glass, which is another outlay, because and put the juice in it. So the people were trying to save their money. So tanks around South Africa, all over South Africa, were holding up this 2020 wine. So then you're going through November, December, January, February, and you're looking at, okay, well, we're going to pick again, and we're going to fill the tanks again. But
where's the grapes going?
Yeah, the grapes had no home, because the home was full from last year's. So that provided the sort of dilemma, whether it's from the big companies or anyone. So yeah, please continue.
Yeah, so I mean, effectively, you've got that bottleneck that's adding up on both sides. The vineyard guys, they cannot stop their process. They have to prune, they have to spray, they've got to go fine tune, they've got to go bud break and do what they do. So they can't just put it on ice. The winemaking side and vineyard side, or the winery side says, well, we can play with time on certain things. We can flush bulk into the systems if we need to, at worst case, open it. The big, robust reds, we can put in barrel for another 6 months or 9 months. It's not the end of the world. But the vineyard guys is the guys that started sweating, because they're like, we have to harvest come end of January 2021.
And Francois, I'm going to interject just one more time for context. Sure. So let's say in France or in Spain, you might own your winery and you own the vineyards around your winery, or you might buy in some grapes, but typically you have this sort of vertical integration of own vines, take care of the vines, pick your own vines, make your own wine. Make sense, Francesca? I mean, that's the way you guys work, I guess.
That's the way we do it, yes.
And that's quite typical in Europe and in other countries, but in some New World countries, South Africa, Australia, you have a divide, well, an amicable divide, but there are those who grow grapes, and that's their industry.
And those that make.
And then separate from that, you've got people who make wine. And so the wineries, whether it's a brand or whether it's an individual like yourself, you go, well, I don't own land. I didn't grow up with it in my family, but I'm going to buy the grapes. So as you're talking now, it's just for people to separate their thoughts of that romantic scene of like Spain or France, right, where it all comes together. In South Africa, you're growing apples and you're growing kiwis, you're growing flowers and you're growing grapes, and then you're trying to sell your grapes as your product, and someone like you wants to buy those grapes. But then back to where you are, nobody wanted to buy the grapes.
Yeah, and I mean, I wouldn't say there were no willing buyers. The willing buyers, unfortunately, their hands were tied behind their backs on two aspects. One, they've got no idea if they're going to have cash flow to actually pay for these grapes, so they don't want to overcommit. And secondly, if it's even worse, they physically didn't have tank space to make the bloody wines in. So they're like, sorry, we can't take the grapes. Yeah, so that brings us to the infamous tweet. And one of the growers I work with, it's a lovely farm up in Helderberg, right up against the mountain. And when I'm talking up against the mountain, it's right on top of it. And you look down the entire Stellenbosch and Cape Town. It's just a lovely property. And Tracy, I mean, she dropped me a line a couple of times, and by that time I can hear this solid desperation in her voice. She's got just no idea what to do anymore. So I reached out to pretty much every colleague I've got on this side to say, listen, have you got tank space? Would you be willing to kind of take in the grapes, even if you don't pay for it, and resell it afterwards, whatever it is? And we came up empty on everything. Everyone just came up and said, can't help you, we're stuck. And I just ironically sent out a tweet. I'm like, well, okay, this is the umpteenth call I've got from another grower saying they're up a creek without a paddle. And then one of your fellow MWs chimed in and said, well, how can we help? And if you know me long enough, you'll also know the level of sarcasm I give out is there's levels to it. And if it's a high level, it means I really like you. And I said to Tim, I said, well, find me a buyer for 40,000 bottles of wine, then you'll help me.
Yeah.
And then a couple of minutes, I think you were on the timeline. And honestly, yeah, like you mentioned, we had discussions several years back, about possibly doing something. And we talked over literally months, if not the span of a year and a bit. And we just couldn't figure out a partnership at that stage for both of us that worked. And ironically, this thing that we did, I think we concluded the whole thing in 10 days, if it wasn't shorter, which was just mind-blowing. It was literally just mind-blowing. I'm like, okay, let's see it. It sounds too good to be true, but I mean, it is. It's here. In the bottle, and it's in fridges all across the UK. So no, yeah. It happened in absolute record time.
Yeah. It was basically, I think I responded, I said, well, maybe, what's the total volume, or maybe we can help, let me know. And then I think we said, I'll DM you or something. Next day we were chatting and then we just cracked on. And what I would just say for everyone who's watching at home, and just to sort of that year, that painful year of us going back and forth, Francois, and not arriving at something, which rarely happens, you know, but it was the right call because we both stuck to our grounds. You had a stylistic view, I had a different sort of anticipation. But when we started talking about this Sauvignon Vineyard, we started talking about the Sauvignon Blanc for the profile for Angels. And it's going to sound a little bit romantic, but you were finishing my sentences. you know, I'd sort of say, and maybe this kind of problem. And you're like, oh yeah, but also with that sort of like juicy pop, that sort of kind of fresh zing thing, but also not too much of this. And so we were totally aligned for the first time, and it worked. So I tell you, and just in summary, we are in a privileged position. Well, let's say in the UK, but also at Naked Wines, we're privileged because we have a lot of Angels that A, like wine, B, like Sauvignon. See, they want to support where they can. And I just knew this was a no-brainer, that we had the talent. I knew you were a talent, but we weren't on the same page on certain things. And what I mean by that stylistically, the profile of the wines, but here we were. And so it was great. It was serendipitous, and it was the right thing to do with top talent. And so we did it. And here we are. So without further ado, can we have a drink? Let's talk. Just give us a quick rundown on this Sauvignon, and also maybe could you just briefly draw parallels to anywhere else in the world, your time in New Zealand, somewhere else, and where does your South African Sauvignon sit in that?
Right, so literally that sound you heard now, that's cracking the last bottle in the country. This is officially the last of the bottles. When we shipped everything other than 5 bottles, and this is now the last one. It's been lying there waiting for this night for a while. So here we go.
Let's go.
So yes, obviously I've got a background in working in New Zealand, but then I also got 6 months later, I worked at Dry Creek Vineyard in Sonoma, and Dry Creek is pretty well known for their Fumé Blanc. So they or Blanc Fumé or whatever they call it, the wooded Sauvignons effectively. So if I look at where we're situated and I look at those styles, the major difference would be location-wise, especially in terms of this vineyard, being right up against that mountain, steep slopes, lots of rock exposure, so not alluvial soils. In this case, it's also old vineyards. The average age is about 35 years old. There's a couple of parts in the block that's a little bit older, but around about 35 years old, which is getting to the tail end of Sauvignon Blanc's kind of age prospects. And then obviously direct exposure to the ocean. I mean, you look straight into False Bay from that vineyard, and there's nothing between you and False Bay.
May I share a video from you, which you shared from base camp?
If you have to.
Let's see that. Let me go this and share screen. Sorry, guys. This will give you context of what. That's the other one. Sorry, and I need to move things around. Bear with me. So sorry. Oh, please make it happen. Here we go. Thanks for your patience. All right, so sound on, let's go.
Status report. Just tasting the Pocop Sauvignon Blanc. This is one block of 3, but we're picking for the Naked Wines project. Just to give you an idea of where we're located. That's Table Mountain back there, Stellenbosch right there, and then we are literally right up against the mountain. This is officially one of the highest blocks of vineyard planted in Helderberg and probably Stellenbosch. Yeah, delightful to work with it.
There we go.
Status report.
So we'll pause that.
Just tasting the Pocop Sauvignon Blanc. This is one block of 3, but we're picking for the Naked Wines project. Just give you an idea where we're located. That's Table Mountain back there.
Kill it. Sorry. What's that,
Stellenbosch right there. And then we are literally.
You can pause, Francois. There we go. Thank you very much.
There you go. So yeah, right. Just to answer your question in terms of style, so you effectively, and I also with great interest read the notes I get from the tasters, and there you can immediately see where those that have had experience with, let's call it higher end South African Sauvignon Blanc, immediately feel home, and then those that haven't had that experience immediately feel this is almost the ambidexterity in this wine is a little bit confusing. Yeah. Because when you've got it in your glass, that gooseberry kind of expectation of fruit is there, which you kind of associate with Chilean and New Zealand Sauvignons. Yeah. But then on the taste, there's that weight that's coming through, which you're like, oh, you don't really kind of expect that type of weight, almost phenolic weight, like Chardonnay-ish kind of pithiness to it.
Yeah.
And then right at the back is that zing of freshness. And the challenge with South African and New World Sauvignons in this style is that zing of freshness has to be perfectly balanced with the intensity of fruit. Otherwise, that acidic bite just becomes overbearing. After like this second glass, it becomes a little bit jarring. So to get that fruit balance is really, that's the single biggest challenge, to get that mouthfeel to develop while not forfeiting any of a primary fruit. So I would say if you take Sancerre, kind of mineral punch at the back, and you throw a dollop of New Zealand and Chilean fruit on top of it, that's pretty much where you end up.
Nice. Good. And to conclude on that wine, we were talking the other day, and what we said when we, so go back to Tracy, the grape grower, who had the Sauvignon vineyard, and I think she said, in our discussion, you said, well, she's in a situation, she would probably accept this amount. And I said, well, we'll pay the full amount, because actually I've worked out the pricing and we can pay the full amount. And then I said, we'll probably take the next vintage as well, because it's about sustainability, and certainly in South Africa and the situation it's in, it's about sustainability. And so you and I are just sort of looking into that at the moment but it's pretty much basically, if the Angels like it and they rate it high,
yeah,
the wine's bloody great. So we want to do it again, and please let Tracy know that we want to commit again and again.
Yeah. So yeah, that side is covered now. Now our fate is in the Angels, effectively.
Yeah, exactly. It's up to you guys if you like it. So Javier, Francesca, we're just going to taste one more wine quickly. I think the whole story, the context was around that Sauvignon. Let's have a quick look at this Syrah from Francois, also Rock View Syrah, and then we will take some questions from the audience or from the viewers. Okay, so yeah. Francois, let's just maybe position Syrah, Shiraz, compare, contrast.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, the difference between the two is stylistic. It's obviously the same grape. And you also have got to accept the fact, we had a long discussion today, actually, with a couple of other winemakers, that you can actually make both styles from a single region if you so wanted to. But my preference in terms of Syrah is that more kind of delineated, slightly tighter structure, not overly big, not overly sweet, not overly extracted. That's just the style of wine I enjoy making. And I like that etherealness to it. The wines aren't too tiring for me. I mean, I really do appreciate those slightly more rambunctious, bigger, fuller extracted versions. For me, Syrah and food just matches much better. I think it's just more versatility there for me. And yeah, when we discussed the Sauvignon Blanc and its release, we said having a partner wine come out with it is a good idea. And at that stage, I had quite a fair chunk, because it was 2020, of very good Stellenbosch Syrah in tank at that stage. And we sent a couple of samples backwards and forwards. And then obviously I know the challenge with Syrah would be within the naked family is to make sure that it is giving enough. It's voluptuous enough. It's got enough kind of meat to the bone, so to speak, and it's not a very kind of dry, pithy, tensile type of wine. So yeah, that's in a nutshell what the Syrah is about. So it's not about oaking, and it's not about big fruit. There's ample structure there.
And as you say, it's foodie wine. Like what did I have last night? Something like runner beans, tomatoes, courgette. It was a vegetarian, but it was just it was fresh. It's just like the acidity that's in it. And lastly, we were talking earlier this week, I think you're talking about 2021 Syrah, and you said it's off the charts.
It is. So, I mean, that is just amazing.
Okay, so again, if you like this Syrah, I believe 2021 is going to be better. So we'll come back for that. Cool, Francois. That's been ace. Thank you very much. Thank you for everyone who's been putting questions into the Q&A. So now I'm going to delve in and see what we have in here. Hello, Anne, and everyone who's been participating. What food pairings would Javier and Francesca suggest to their wines? Can you suggest some food pairing, guys? Maybe I think you said that Treixadura was for food. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Treixadura for food, even only, but I think mariscos, como decimos, mariscos, pescados a la plancha,
Shells, fish,
pescados a la plancha,
Grilled fish a la plancha?
a la plancha, yes, like
Grilled outside.
grill, okay. It combines easily with, inclusive con arroces, no?
Of course.
Rices,
Yo creo que Treixadura un poquito más de comer y los otros son un
okay.
poquito más.
It says
pero
that
sí.
it combines very easily with any kind of food,
Yeah.
except, not except, okay, less meat, but usually fish, shells, shrimps, mussels, and tapas,
Yeah, all kind of fish and
rices,
and white meat.
white meat.
No problem.
Mhm.
I think it's very easy.
Easy to pair, to combine, yes.
I think, yeah, if it would help Anne as well is if I'm tasting the wine and we've talked about it has it's not heavy, it has some body, but it's not full bodied. It has a silkiness, a glossiness, like marble feel to it. So then you think about that you think about it like food. You almost have to look at food differently. You don't have to, but this helps. And you think, what is the texture of that food, and what is the sort of overbearing contribution of that food, which can be good. Like a really seared steak gives a really good flavor, but it's all about that flavor. But some other, like rice with white fish, it's subtle, it's soft, it's easy. And so it's about, when you drink the wine, it's complementing. So I think you guys have said it, grilled fish, rice dishes, so on. That sounds perfect. Great. Okay. Stephen asks, should the Albarino be drunk this year? So we have two wines, one which is a Treixadura Albarino Godello blend, and then there's the Treixadura, Treixadura. What do you think? They're both 2020, I think. Do they need to be drunk early, or can they age 1 year, or do they need to be?
At the beginning, the white wines, young white wines, they had this scheduled time that you're supposed to drink it, to have it, to have the perception as the best at the moment,
Yeah.
But we have had our wines since 2013. And the development has been really nice.
Wow.
On the bottle.
Yeah, I think our wines, our grapes, our acidity, you preserve very well the wine. I think we can consume our wines 1, 2, 3, 4 years.
Yes.
And it's normal. It's a good evolution during these days. Keep the fresh, keep the acidity, good grapes with potential, and young wine or with 2-3 years, very good with evolution with
evolves well on the bottle. We have noticed that in our wine.
I would agree. Looking at the style of this wine, it has enough to give a little bit more. Great. Okay. And Carolyn asks, can you send me details, Javier and Francesca? We'll pass them on to my guests and friends over in the Costa Verde. So how can we do this? Can you send me? So basically, perhaps Carolyn, if you don't mind to drop a note either in the chat, and then we'll get it to Francesca and Javier, or else you can write it on their wall. But yes, we will hook you up, whether it's on here or somewhere or another. An anonymous attendee, I think that comes in through Facebook. What would be either winemaker's dream wine to make? Great question. Francois, to you.
My dream wine. That's like asking what's your favorite child.
But you have one, don't you?
Of course I do, but I can't admit it on a public viewing channel. Come on, right? No, my dream wine, as I sit right here, I would not mind dabbling my hand at Nebbiolo in Italy.
Very nice. And what is it?
Yeah.
Why so? Just briefly, and then we'll go
there's twofold. Well, more than twofold. One, I love Italians just purely because they can be obviously angry with everyone, and everyone still loves them, which I find amazing because that's my de facto state. So I'll kind of just fit in right there. I wouldn't. It's not going to be frowned upon in my normal state. Secondly, it's an ethereal wine for me, Nebbiolo. I struggle at the best of times to wrap my head around it because it's got such depth and such amazing layers and potential. I mean, it can age for 30, 40, 50 years. It's amazing in its youth as well if it's made for that style. And above all else, it's based when you guys discussed the food pairings part as well, and that's where my mind goes back to. Food, especially in European context, and wine is born within a region. That's where it fits. So when you look at Tuscan cooking and the food, it just complements that wine. And I think it's the culture part of the history of the grape that beguiles me actually more than the grape itself.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, how they all worked along modestly and occasionally peasantly, just to get at that point. And just for the avoidance of doubt, Nebbiolo is Barolo, Barbaresco, the North Turin area, Piedmont. Yeah, very good. Okay, and Javier, is there a wine you would like to make somewhere else, another country? Or at home?
Yeah, really, we are very young. I'm very young in this world, in the wine. I need to travel to know another wines. It's very difficult to respond to answer your question. Maybe 1 year we can travel and elaborate in another lands, but I think it would be in Spain. I don't know why, but I think it would be in Spain, and sure in our region and Galicia. I don't know why. Maybe I'm from here, and this is the reason.
Yeah,
it's good. You have another spiritual calling. You are being pulled to another place in Galicia to complete what you're doing. Not complete, maybe the next stage of what you're doing. So you don't need to go very far, and we learned that in the past 18 months. You don't need to go very far to get a lot done and maybe to fulfill. Yeah.
it's been a challenge, and we are a young winery, and the mono varietal, it's been a challenge itself, for the Ribeiro, because Ribeiro is known for the blend, the mixture of grapes. So we still think we need more time here, investing our time in this land instead of going to another country,
It's great. It's great to have two really good and very different answers. It's good. It's great. I wasn't expecting either. So it's lovely. Nice one. Great question, anonymous attendee. I wish I could call you out, but I don't have your name. Great. And Jude, yes, mate?
So Xavier, if you find a really interesting piece of land and really interesting grapes, let me know. I'll be on the plane. I'll come help you. Because I'm keen to do something in Europe.
We wait for you to taste, to share with you.
Yes,
That'll
an
be cool.
exchange.
I think that there might be a synergy there. Just remember, in a South African context, we are renowned for our single vineyard and single varietal wines, where blending is something we do on a tenth of our wines.
Mm.
When in a Portuguese and a Spanish perspective, blending is the de facto
Yes.
position and single vineyard is the exception.
Good. You're right. Julie Bolton, one of our archangels, asks, with a name like Francois, I assume you have some French ancestry. Whereabouts in France does your name come from, and do you maintain a strong connection with France?
Alas, not French. Pour le vin français, no. That's the extent of my French,
Sure.
and it is really shocking. But I'm actually fluent in French after the 5th bottle, so yeah, you got to bear with me. I'm gonna get there. No, not French. Flemish actually. So more Belgium and Flanders. But no ancestors which I can claim any relation to back in Europe. I'm actually ninth generation South Africa, and my son is now the 10th generation that's born in South Africa. So yeah, but Belgium on the basically the border between Belgium and Netherlands. So hence my surname Haasbroek, HAASBROEK, gives that away. So very much Flanders.
Very good. Okay. I'm skimming through some questions here and selecting at this point. There's a question from Fine Wine Club, as the name goes. And I guess it's for Francois, but I'm not going to ask Francois because it will open up a can of worms. And the question is, when is South African prohibition likely to stop? And I might just say that who knows, this I don't think he really backs the current government. And so we will move on in the interest of time. And but a question again from Stephen from previously, for both winemakers, is the English taste, or maybe let's call it the British taste, very different to other wine consumers? Have you seen, Javier, that selling to the UK and the feedback from the UK is different from another country?
Dice que sí. ¿Entendiste?
Sí,
¿Qué tal el paladar de los
well,
británicos comparado con los otros consumidores?
I think in general Europe has a similar tasting. I think we are young, I said, but our experience, people love Galician wines, white wines, good elaborations, and it's a surprise for us, UK, but it's a surprise UK, Germany, Denmark, or China, USA.
Netherlands.
In general, people love.
They take both wines. You know, they're different markets, and they favor both of them. So we can't say specifically, you know, that they favor one or the other one.
I think in your situation, you've got a unique, really original to your region. The quality is outstanding. Yeah. You either like the wines or you don't, and you're if you don't like them, you're drunk. And then in Francois, for you, I mean, Sauvignon Blanc is a sort of a, you know, in South Africa it goes green pea, green bean, but then it goes exuberant. So what do you think for UK consumers?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I mean, if you've been to the country often now and you know what we eat, I mean, it's a lot of meat and starches, but there's also the East Indian influence in our cooking. And to answer your question in terms of what our kind of feedback is from consumers in the UK on the wines, I think we kind of easily find our spot in the sun in terms of finding a crowd that likes what we make, for the simple reason that the UK has never been a producing country traditionally. I mean, I'm talking about white wines and red wines, not the kind of emergence of sparkling wines of late. And why I'm referencing to that is very similar to Scandinavia. If you weren't a producing country like us and Spain and Italy and France, you don't pigeonhole yourself to this is the style of wine we expect and that suits our cuisine, because our cuisine evolves and the wines comes in 40-foot containers on ships. So we don't grow it and make it and define our culture around it. So that's why anything from Barossa Shiraz straight through to the most amazingly tense style Cote Rotis and Saint Joseph and Hermitage has a home in London and surrounds, because it's such cosmopolitan, diverse dichotomy of flavors and tastes, and so I can't really say that I've ever had feedback saying, well, that style is undrinkable. The only thing I have found is there's a shift away from rusticity more to more defined and kind of not elegant but defined and finely nuanced wines, which I think has been an evolution in the world market straight through. No one has moved towards rusticity. Everyone's moved towards more, not fruit driven, but polished and elegant and layered and subtle sometimes, but not.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have one last question. It's to you, Francois, then we're going to wrap up. But first of all, there's a question here from Chris. He says, I'm off to help harvest a field of sweet corn at the weekend, and some of it will be going on the barbecue at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Should I take Francois Sauvignon or Syrah to go with the vegetable brie? One of each is obviously an option. So it's a yes, no, it's a Sauvignon, Syrah, or both answer. Gonna have to press you for an answer.
I'm gonna say yes to both. Drink the Sauvignon while you're lighting the barbecue, and drink the Syrah when the food is done.
Yeah, good man. Nice and simple. That's it. Well, thank you everyone for joining, especially Francesca Javier for the view of the river. It was amazing. And then your barrels and everything. And the wines are brilliant. We look forward to working with you, I hope, if you're interested for many years. And Francois, thanks for your time and your energy all the time. It's fantastic. It's really promising, and we've got great things to do together. Everyone, thanks for tuning in and contributing to the chat. Next week, Tuesday, I'll be in a Spanish restaurant, a Basque restaurant in Norwich, with Derek, who was one of the founders of Naked Wines. We'll be cooking, they'll be cooking, I'll be eating, but I'll be showing you some of the cuisine from northern Spain, San Sebastian, Galicia, and speaking with Rodolfo Bastida in Rioja, and tasting some wine. So next Tuesday at 8 p.m. That's the next installment of the September Festival. Thank you, everybody. It's been a lovely evening, lovely people. Take care, everyone. All the best. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Ray.
Bye-bye. Thank
Javier,
you.
Francesca.
Thank you.